felt this overwhelming sense of relief about him. And it was the first time I cried tears that were happy.
Welcome back to the Veterans Voice podcast. If you're anything like me and our guest this week, you grew up getting hurt with your friends jumping your bike off curbs and building ramps out of scrap plywood. Daniel Byrd, Executive Director of Kids on Bikes, decided to turn this childhood passion into a nonprofit geared towards helping kids become just as passionate as he is. Ahead in the episode, Dan explains how bicycling has played many roles in his life. From exercise and adventure to a form of therapy and self-improvement, biking is Daniel's purpose in all aspects of his life. This episode is full of emotional and inspiring stories, from watching a child learn how to change a tire and ride a bike up a mountain, to Dan's hardest ever ride that brought tears to his eyes. You'll definitely want to stay tuned to the end. We hope you enjoy the episode. If you enjoy the Veterans Voice podcast, please share with a friend or family member. We can be found on any of your favorite podcast platforms, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
USAA is proudly celebrating 100 years of serving the military community. It was a group of soldiers who launched USAA in 1922 by joining together to insure each other's vehicles when no one else would. Since then, USAA has grown to more than 13 million members strong. And through it all, one thing has remained. USAA is still serving the military community and their families. Find out more at usaa.com/100.
Daniel Byrd with Kids on Bikes. Welcome to the Veterans Voice podcast. How's it going?
It's going great. I was able to ride my bike here, so I always feel a little bit better.
Oh, no way.
That, so I feel great.
How far was that?
This is only a couple miles,
okay.
So nothing terrible.
Sure. For you, maybe. So the nonprofit, like I said, Kids on Bikes. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely. So Kids on Bikes is a nonprofit local here to Colorado Springs, founded back in 2005, simply addressing the need for kids to be outside more often. And bicycling in the bicycle itself is such a simple tool that can provide so much to kids. And a lot of times we talk about what a rite of passage it is, not only to learn to ride a bike, but to what does it mean to take ownership of a bike. So Kids on Bikes is focused right here in El Paso County. We actually serve not only multiple school districts and community centers and nonprofits, but we help provide access to bikes by providing bike donations outside of Colorado Springs once in a while when needed. So we're just more or less focused right here in the Pikes Peak region in general.
Okay, so 2005, that's been almost 20 years at this point. You were involved back then getting this started?
I was not. I connected with Kids on Bikes in about 2009, 2010.
Okay.
At the time, I was a social worker here in town helping youth exit homelessness and getting them into permanent supportive housing. So Kids on Bikes had various aspects of programming and the way they fulfilled the mission working with schools, specifically Title I schools. And then I joined and more or less volunteered with them starting about 2011 when I had started a program for youth at the organization I was working at. And that's how I got connected with Kids on Bikes and realized, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to bring my social work and reasons for why I do social work into my passion for bicycling.
For sure.
And then for me, and it's so much about working upstream. And a lot of times when you're discussing things with social workers, it's about more preventative care. How do you help further upstream? And this was a big part of that for me. I realized there's an organization here in town doing fantastic work in the same neighborhoods that I was going into when I was working with 18, 19, 20-year-olds who were experiencing homelessness.
Right.
So that's how I started joining with Kids on Bikes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So we were talking a little bit before the mics came on, but I really want to dive deep into it now. You're passionate about bicycling, and that's what got you involved with Kids on Bikes.
Right.
Why are you so passionate about it? Just how'd you get involved in bicycling? How did it benefit your life, and why did you feel the need to help others with it?
So it was, and I never realized just how significant and meaningful my experiences as a kid were with a bike. Not only getting my first bike, but mowing lawns and buying my first favorite mountain bike that actually sadly got stolen, but also taught me a lot of great lessons in that too that I can expand on later. But
sure.
The bike for me was not only how I got to school, but to my friend's house, building jumps that were pretty unsafe when I look back at it. But that bike provided me so much freedom and independence. And I grew up here in Colorado Springs, went to an elementary school just below where UCCS is, and it's no longer there. But I also got experiences mountain biking as a kid. Now, my passion growing up was hockey, and I still love the game of ice hockey, and I still play. But bicycling is far more unique. I can't ice skate to get to work, right? So I mountain biked Rampart Reservoir as a kid, Palmer Park as a kid, and the bicycle was still just mountain biking in general, just because I love getting out in the mountains so much. Throughout college, I commuted, but personally, when I started as a social worker, this was back in 2006, my wife and I had just gotten married. I was working with that organization. It's now called The Place, helping youth exit homelessness, and I lost my older brother to suicide. That was in January of 2007, and my buddy who we still ride single speed mountain bikes built me up this really simple single speed, fully rigid mountain bike, and that became my therapy. I rode that thing hard before work, lunch break, after work. It was truly how I processed not just the weight of losing my older brother, best friend, but he because he had such an impact on me also riding bikes and playing hockey and everything. But at that same time, I was doing that social work job. And the job I was doing as a case manager with these youth was super heavy. And, I was doing suicide interventions truly on a weekly basis, because a lot of times these youth are wondering, what's the point, right? And yeah, they have a lot of things stacked against them. They've got a lot of barriers in their way. So suicide, or even just the contemplation or thoughts of it, they were conversations. They were more or less regular conversations where I worked. So needless to say, I had to ride. I had to do something to be positive, healthy for me to process all that. So that's where my passion for the bike really got reignited. And again, as a kid, it was just what was normal. But then I do remember how, wow, I really always loved riding a bike. And then it just kind of reignited my mid-20s at that time. So
yeah, it says a lot about you as a person. I mean, a lot of people go through traumatic events like a death, like a breakup, like an injury, and they turn to poor outlets.
Right.
And that's a slippery slope. You have option A and option B when you go through a situation like that. You chose positivity, exercise, things like that. So did you ever struggle with maybe the contrary, like a bad habit or going down the opposite route?
Absolutely. And I would focus inward too. And yeah, it was a huge struggle because of the impact on my family. Alcoholism runs in my family. And so I had to be very, very careful of that. And that was a huge part of what aided in my brother's situation as well. So, yeah, absolutely. And especially when it takes a long time to process any trauma. And I think the more we continue to learn about trauma in general and then apply it to our own lives, you realize you're never really done in some ways. And you might underestimate just how many significant things that happen to you as a kid really influences your decisions when you're 21, 31, and so forth.
Well, for sure.
So that actually was a huge part in my social work, not just training, but experience. I can truly attest to where when you work with a youth for 2.5 years and you get to know them, they get to know you, and they start to trust you more, and they're explaining more about their story. You start to go back further and further to that first traumatic situation. And it was the first time they saw mom hit them or sibling, or dad hit mom. It was the first time they remember somebody getting incarcerated. There's just something that's so pivotal to why they won't trust you, why you're going to have to work really hard to get my trust. So, you know, as a social worker, you recognize that in the trauma piece, but then you are dealing with secondary trauma in that sense too. Because, I mean, truly, we love these kids that we're working with and serving and caring for.
Right.
So you're taking that on. And so you better figure out a way to process that.
For sure.
And exercise after work, or I don't care what it is. It's, you know, that's why there's so many good outlets and why so much makes sense. For me, that outlet became the bicycle, and it's still very much just when I deal with a stressful day. A ride always works. Push-ups work too.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's just a lot of, there's got to be those outlets there. Right. And you know, I could truly go into more of the trauma piece, because not only did I experience it myself personally, but the youth that I'm serving, because when I was doing that social work job and got bikes for those kids, and this was really how I blended my passion and skill set as a social worker, was how much more traumatic things we had to overcome and how much time it takes. And so a lot of times it's about introducing something positive for the first time.
Right.
That takes a lot of work.
Yeah, you need time, is like what I kept hearing you say. You need time and hard work to process these traumatic situations, and bicycling does that. I mean, how long does it take to bike 100 miles, and how much of that is a struggle? Are you questioning, man, why did I take on a 100-mile bike ride or a 200-mile bike ride? I don't know what's far for you, but yeah, that's a great outlet.
Yeah, and it's about pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, because you know it's going to be good for you in the long run. For sure. There's also a lot to be said about, you know, EMDR is an incredibly powerful therapy tool and process to go through, and I did go through that process as well. So kind of everything that I could do to personally get myself working towards a healthier me, the version of me I need to get to, so that have more impact with what I'm doing. Right. Not just as a husband, but then as a dad. We've got twin boys that are 12 years old now.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, to that point, it's 100 miles then becomes 200, and keep pushing yourself, keep challenging yourself. And you know, when I started versus where I'm at now, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I crashed in Palmer Park trying to ride some technical section. And I remember getting angry at that, and just I wouldn't leave, and we do what's called sessioning something, where you just keep going until you clean it, till you ride it, whether it's up or down, super rocky section or whatever. And then I got better and better and better at that, and then I just keep going harder, faster. And so that was all therapeutic.
So bicycling became this healthy outlet to help you, you know, work through, and are still using it to work through this traumatic experience. So this is clearly why you're passionate about this. Yeah. What was it about Kids on Bikes, you know, their priorities as a nonprofit, that, you know, encouraged you to get involved?
It was seeing Kids on Bikes working with younger kids. And that's one aspect that I alluded to, where when you work upstream, when you work further upstream, or when you start to look at how do you keep people from ending up on the streets, in jail, or taking their own life, you start to work against all that to say, well, what's happening in the home when those kids are 10, and so on and so forth. So Kids on Bikes was doing some work with younger kids, and I started to recognize just how critical it, you know, when you look at things through a childhood development lens, how much needs to happen at age 2, age 4, age 10, and so on, because of what's happening as the child develops, their sense of self, their habits, their relationship with food, so on and so on. There's so much to that. And when you look at a topic like homelessness, you've got multiple indicators 15, 17 indicators of what causes homelessness. And there's so many that are interwoven. Well, I started to see a bicycle as a good tool to help with a lot of that. Doesn't solve everything, but transportation, exercise, all these aspects that a bicycle can help with, I started to connect those dots. So the same neighborhoods that Kids on Bikes now serves were the same neighborhoods that I was going into as a social worker to help an 18-year-old clean out the apartment they just got evicted from. So I was purely seeing it as this is more intervention type of work. And I firmly still see that more and more programming that we develop, and the deeper we dive into the neighborhoods we serve, you never really know the type of long-term impact that we're going to have. But we do know, after doing our own pre and post survey process and so forth, that we are having a good long-term impact on how well kids can take ownership of their own health. Because one aspect of our programming is they have to learn how to fix their own flat tire before they take ownership of a bike.
Oh, for sure.
Because a little over 50% of kids that have a bike, they say it's broken. I'm air quoting here. You know, it's broken. It's really just flat tires. And that's what prevents them from riding their bike. The chain drops or the flat tires.
Right.
That's a very easy fix. So we not only help them earn a bike by teaching them to fix a flat, but we do all these other aspects so they can be owners of the bike and eliminate those excuses as to why aren't you out playing and riding your bike to the park, go meet up with your buddies and go play basketball, ride your bikes to do that. So it's that flat tire piece. But, you know, a lot of times, even when they have access to a bike in a lower income neighborhood, flat tires, the bike just sits there. Yeah. So that's a big aspect of what we address.
On like the spectrum of age ranges of like who's changing tires, what's like some of the youngest that you're seeing or able to teach?
Fourth grade is typically about the youngest. Fifth grade for sure. And in general, it's going to be about a fifth grade audience.
Okay.
They have a little bit more of the elbow grease capacity, but also the practice of following some instructions, because they'll get some instructions to go with it.
Right.
It's, of course, not very complex, and we've definitely met a lot of adults, moms and dads who come out on our family rides who feel embarrassed because they don't know how to change a flat. There's no shame in that. It's not as though they're teaching that in school. It's totally okay. But fifth grade is also where developmentally they have the capacity to kind of take on that and retain that information, practice it, be responsible for the tools that they're given, the pump, the wrench, and the tire levers, and the patch kit itself. And fifth grade is also when we can trust that they're going to be able to go out into the streets. They're developing their peripheral vision and those kinds of things too. So riding in the streets is even safer, because typically with ages younger than that, we're sticking to sidewalks. So all that to say, it's with the fixing of the flat and sort of that higher level education, fifth grade and up is what we typically focus on.
Okay. That's really impressive. I don't think I was changing tires at fifth grade.
I did. And actually it was my older brother who taught me to fix a flat in our garage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I always remember that. And when I was doing programming directly myself, I would always, you've got all these kids, you've got a tire inside with the tube and everything, and we go through it step by step, and then the kids all do it. And, well, how did you learn to do this? Coach Byrd, how did you learn? And I tell them, well, my older brother actually taught me in our garage. And so that was a unique thing that I didn't realize was so significant for me as a kid, but that was a meaningful thing. So, yeah.
Well, that's a great segue into our next little segment here, your guys' motivation behind all this. There's clearly an obesity epidemic in America. And, before the mics came on, we kind of came to the conclusion that it's because outdoor play has been replaced with screenplay.
Yes.
So bicycle riding games rather than bicycle riding.
Right.
So how are you guys using this as fuel to really, expand your guys' nonprofit and help as many children as possible?
So it was when Kids on Bikes was founded in 2005, that's when a lot of the reports were coming out about childhood obesity was on a scary rise. I mean, words like, this is an issue, this is scary, this is alarming, if you will. And then Department of Defense came out with their own report that identified that very same issue. And more so and more so studies are showing and results are showing and surveys are showing it for not just Colorado youth or El Paso County, but nationally. Yes, there is still a significant rise. And then what does that lead to in terms of it's diabetes? There's mental health aspects that you can link to it all as well. But essentially, kids are not as active as they used to be. And kids should be getting at least 60 minutes of physical activity a day. And that's a minimum. That they should get at least 60 minutes of physical play, get that heart rate up. And quick side note, we would do this thing where we would have kids feel like their heart's just going to beat out of their chest, feel their pulse for the first time, and I'm going to die, I'm going to die. And we go, no, that's your heart getting stronger. Right. That's your lung capacity increasing. This is a good thing for you to do. And believe it or not, you should do this multiple times a week, right? And so just getting that experience, again, for younger kids for the first time, then they start to remember that and retain that. Oh, okay, this is good. And then the other fun part of that is, this is also why it's not great to smoke cigarettes maybe. And maybe this is why you want to choose water over soda. Because most of the time when you take kids out, and as they get older, you get really, really thirsty, super hot day in the summer. Water always is far more appealing and refreshing than soda. Like if we stacked a soda can next to a water, they're going to chug the water first because your body you just naturally know this is better for me. We got to create that for them. So anyway, I was going to say COVID certainly highlighted a lot of things then too. If we fast forward from 2005 when the obesity screen time things were coming out, it was a Colorado Health Report back in 2015 that kids under the age of 18 were averaging 7 hours and 38 minutes of screen time each day and only 7 minutes in active play outdoors.
7 hours?
True.
Man, and what year was that?
2015. So this is before the pandemic.
Right.
2020 made all of that so much worse.
Sure.
Therefore, mental health was more prevalent in aspects like that too. But you got to remember, 18 and under. So we're talking the kids that have smartphones, they're on screens in school. There's a lot of screen time when you really assess it on average, just how much. And then you still see kids out playing soccer. You still see a lot of youth sports, but you got to remember all the population that you're not seeing. Right. And this amount of screen time in school, PE sometimes gets cut back. There's a lot that goes into a report like that. And that's just one bit of that bigger issue that you don't have to connect all the other dots necessarily. Common sense will tell you, oh yeah, that's probably not good.
Right.
That's a lot of screen time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just a quick, math in my head. If that persists into adulthood, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of screen time, that's your life.
Right.
Man.
We're not meant to do that.
No, we're not.
No. Right.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Are you, this is a little bit of just my own curiosity. Do you have kids come in that are, screen addicts per se, and like they don't even have the attention span to change a tire? Like they just give up? It's funny, but like... Yeah.
It's fun. I chuckle because the attention span for kids is always fun.
Right.
And this is because I also still help coach youth hockey. And when you're coaching kids, so we do these learn to ride for 4-year-olds, teaching them to ride on those little balance bikes. And we also coach kids that are 13. The attention span thing is fun fun in a sense, but it is fun because kids are just so cute.
Right.
And you really only have if they're 6 years old, you have about 6 seconds to make your instruction happen. Like that, click. Yeah. Right. If they're 10, keep it to 10 words or less.
Right.
10 seconds. And that's a lot of times how we frame things when we're doing that. So if they're 12, you can unpack a little bit more information. You're limited with their attention though.
Right.
And I'm not sure. I've never actually been properly diagnosed myself, but there's definitely some ADD-ish type things that I have. I've got a very busy, active mind. I've got a lot of energy physically, and so I just sort of, that's how I am, and my attention sometimes can be waning. I'm like, oh, man, how have I eaten? How have I exercised? So even into adulthood in my 40s, that's still a thing, but that's why I kind of chuckle it.
Yeah,
It's funny, but
funny.
for kids especially, man, the attention is interesting. What I see more so, though, to answer your question, is making eye contact, how they shake your hand, their ability to formulate a sentence. There's a lot of other things that, and this is me kind of speculating a little bit more so myself, but I do see a difference in how I was raised to interact and engage and what would hold my attention. I mean, I didn't go around the neighborhood with a phone. I went around the neighborhood with my rollerblades or with my bike.
Right.
So it's just how I grew up versus screens weren't a thing. The screens in my life, I was limited to 1 hour of TV a day at most. Sometimes we'd watch Monday Night Football. Sometimes, I remember watching Star Wars as a kid. But we didn't have a Nintendo in the house.
Right.
And I actually got really mad at my friends when Nintendo came out and they were playing Super Mario Brothers or whatever. I got personally so frustrated with my friends because they'd want to keep playing, and I thought it was the dumbest, most boring thing.
Yeah.
Let's go outside, and I wanted to go play football, or I wanted to do anything but sit inside on a nice day. So that was me also personally. So.
What are you seeing specifically back to like your eye contact and how they shake your hand? What are you seeing?
Physical fitness is not as normal for kids. Now we do see good, healthy kids that are active in other sports, but I think there's less physical activity and prioritizing physical health over screen-related things.
Right. Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to put it together. Like a kid that can't make eye contact won't shake your hand well. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like
I've seen it, and I don't know how much that was a thing for, if I go back to when I was 15, for example, is that what my parents saw? I'm not so sure, but what I do definitely see is, and I do hear this from parents, is that, this is good. Otherwise, they just want to sit inside playing Fortnite or some video game. And as a, not only as a dad, but as a hockey coach myself and everything we do for kids on bikes, there are a lot of stories about how kids, until they got on the bike and started exercising a ton, they just more or less, the parents allude to, this is getting them out of the house and putting their video game controller down.
Right.
So I hear that a lot because the access to video games and screens is just so easy. I mean, I don't know, maybe you honestly have to work harder to get to a convenience store to buy a Snickers bar than you do to waste time and be unhealthy with a screen.
Yeah. I don't know. When I think of like these types of issues, I like to revert to nature and like wildlife. A mother enables its young to like learn and build confidence. Like a bird is going to jump out of the nest and it's going to fly or not. So like you have to enable your children to mess up, make decisions, build confidence in themselves. So, when it comes time to like do taxes or you're in an argument at the DMV, they have confidence to like hold their own and make decisions. So I think you're not going to build confidence chopping fruit on an iPad, but you are going to build confidence changing a tire. Yes. So it sounds like you're just building confidence in these kids, which they're not really getting elsewhere.
That exactly right. And truly, not only in I have the capacity, I have what it takes to repair something, but also when they see this hill in front of them on a bike, I can't get up that. Are you kidding me? I want to walk it. Fine, you walk it. Either way, you're getting you and the bike to the top.
Right.
We'll see you up there. And I loved doing that as a coach because what a lot of times they would do is there'd be one or two kids in the group that kind of already have a little bit of I can do it. I'm going to show you how it's done. And a few other kids, oh, well, shoot, if he's doing it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that good peer influence in our programs, which is super helpful. But then it becomes more of, if you're by yourself, are you going to take the initiative? Are you going to be make excuse and, I can't. I would, but I can't. And so we definitely try to work on eliminating all those excuses for kids as to why they couldn't or can't.
Right.
And our summer bike camps highlight that a lot, and then our Earn a Bike programs, because kids don't just get a bike. They have to have some skin in the game, and that's huge. But I remember talking to a good friend of mine who started Hillside Connection, and he uses the game of basketball to teach kids. And we were talking about this a lot, and how you put kids either individually or in a group against those, and then you're just there to coach and just sort of, hey, we have our first aid kit here. If you do, or when you do crash, you're going to be okay. That's a fun one. We go through a lot of Band-Aids, but you realize the kids are great. And I'll show them my scar, sometimes too, of scary or whatever. And I go, no, see this one right here on my elbow? This is when my front wheel went into what we call a wheel trap. I went over the bars, did this, and I'm still out riding. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I learned from that one, and I move on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe even tougher now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Colorado Computer Support. Imagine never having to worry about your information systems ever again. Colorado Computer Support, the exclusive Veterans Voice technology partner meeting all of our computing needs. Colorado Computer Support is veteran-owned. They're your team for innovative, collaborative IT services and solutions to enhance and support your Colorado business. When you need IT services to keep your business going, make sure the Colorado Computer Support team is on your team. Call 719-355-2440. To learn more, that's 719-355-2440.
The Veterans Voice is sponsored in part by Optum and is produced in the Optum Podcast Studio. Optum and Mountain View Medical Group offer 15 clinics throughout the Pikes Peak region. Their primary and specialty care doctors provide quality, patient-centered care backed by Optum's industry-leading health services and technology. They're dedicated to helping our community live healthier while keeping care affordable. Visit optum.com/Colorado to learn more and schedule your appointment today. Tell us about that. What's Earn a Bike?
Earn a Bike is our catch-all phrase for the programming that focuses on kids in specific parts of town where financial barriers are higher, limited access to a traditional bike shop, and I'm going to take a step back first to talk about our program model. So we partner strongly with other organizations, school districts, to make sure that the bicycling programming is also being co-led, because, going back to that topic of trust, it's one thing for an entity to just show up and say, we are going to provide you a program and this is what it looks like, more or less a cookie cutter type of, this is our program. And that is helpful, and there's purpose in that, and we are the youth bicycling experts, but we're not the experts in these neighborhoods where other people live and work. They know the family dynamics, they know the kids, what the kids are up against. So they help identify the kids to be part of the Earn a Bike. So these will be kids a lot of times not in other after-school activities, other sports, whose families probably are struggling a little bit more. So we partner with the school. In many cases, it's a PE teacher or one of the counselors or something, and we train them how to run the programming. Or here's what we're going to do when we show up to co-lead it with you, all the while trying to get them to basically know how to run the programming for themselves. From that, they select the kids, and now we unpack at least 4 sessions of, these are the critical things you need to know if you're going to take ownership of a bike. Why is it important to wear a helmet, first and foremost? We address that, and then how do you check the bike to make sure it's safe before you ride it? Then you cover the fix a flat piece. So how do you repair your own flat tire? How do you put the chain back on if the chain comes off? Those are the 2 basic things why kids will stop riding a bike, flat tires. So they're going to learn how to fix their own flat. And then they're going to learn basic safety-related things relevant to their age and where they live. So 5th grade on up, we teach more road safety-related things, crossing busy streets, identifying essentially what do I need to know if I'm going to ride my bike from home to school. if I'm going to use crosswalks or not, how do I ride in the street, what sort of things do I need to be on the lookout for. So that's all part of the basic earn a bike. From that, though, we also can expand it to do more and longer rides, practicing a lot of bike handling skills, and really develop it into more of we have a piece of our curriculum that's all about getting your heart rate up, teaching kids how to check their heart rate and what does that mean for my body to get my heart rate up really hard. So we'll figure out a way to get that exercise in sometimes. And a handful of other things that creates that earn a bike. And so what we do is we not only get them the bike that they've used, but they get a pump, patch kit, helmet, bike lock. They get everything they need to take ownership.
That's really cool. That's an awesome program.
Yeah.
You know, this is the Veterans Voice podcast. When I met you, I kind of had in mind, military families and like dad's deployed, mom's probably more likely to throw the iPad in front of the kid. So how might, a veteran or active duty family get involved in something like this? Let's say we have a family, father's deployed, and the mom is just like, he can only chop so much fruit on the iPad, and he's driving me nuts.
Right.
Wants to give him a bike. How would he get involved?
Right. And it's where you and I met first and foremost is come visit the pedal station. So that Earn a Bike program I was just talking about and everything else we do is partly funded by the proceeds that we bring in through Mountain Equipment Recyclers and the pedal station over off of Bott Avenue. Come in and see us because we can make a quality bike affordable. From there too, you can look at and see when our family clinics are. So mountain bike clinics, family rides, if there's room still in some of our summer bike camp opportunities, perhaps there's a program in the neighborhood, the school that the family is attending as well. In fact, we have what's called our popsicle rides. So every Sunday, it's the first Sunday in June all the way through August with a handful of rides that are going to be kind of what we call We All Ride, which is kids and people with various disabilities joining in as well. But the family ride is a free opportunity to leave from America the Beautiful Park at 1 o'clock, ride up the Santa Fe Trail, the Greenway Trail, to the Popsicle Bridge. We bring popsicles, have a popsicle, and then ride back.
Oh, cool.
It's a really fun, laid-back, fully supported family ride.
Okay.
Anything with wheels that you're going to consider a bike.
Right.
So we have kids that join in on the Strider. They jump in the trailer, maybe that's being pulled if they can only make it halfway, or they just turn back. Whatever it needs to look like for them to have a successful, fun time outside. So the popsicle rides is a very easy, simple, fun access point to kids on bikes. And it's every Sunday starting June 2nd through August 24th, I believe. And that's where you not only get to join a ride for free, but mom can let their kids go and ride off with other people and have that fun. It's simple and it's fun, and we always enjoy doing that every summer.
Man, I want a popsicle. I'm going to come up.
It's called the Popsicle Bridge, and it has this little thing that is called a traffic garden, and it's got these bike lanes, traffic lane type of thing built in, so we teach some road safety things without actually being on the road.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's 2 of them here in town. The other one's at El Pomar Youth Bike Park, which we had a huge hand in the programming aspect of and the planning of. So the other aspect of how to get involved is just simply hop on social media or go to our website, kidsonbikes.net, figure out how to get, engaged in whatever way is appropriate, social media or newsletter, whatever the case might be, to just see when those other opportunities are coming in. We had on Saturday, just this past weekend, we did a bike rodeo with Shields and got a bunch of kids out to go through these stations of bike skills. So ABC Quick Check, that's how you check your bike to make sure it's safe to ride.
Okay.
Is there air in the tires? Brakes work? Chains on? You check the bike over, ABC Quick Check. And then And then we did a quick little skill and drill thing and had this fun little bike course thing for them to run. So even bike rodeo events or other things will pop up too. But if they don't get it onto social media or a newsletter, they may not hear about it unless they just come in regularly to the pedal station.
Every skill I've ever learned, I feel like has an ABC acronym. I was a medic in the Army. Airway, breathing, circulation. Oh, yeah. Radios, antenna, battery, connection. There's all these ABCs. It's really funny.
I didn't know that.
But in keeping with the theme of getting involved, tell us about your donation program, like accepting bike donations.
Yeah, and thanks for asking that, because we can't do what we do without donations. Getting bikes donated so that we can get them fixed up and back out into the neighborhoods we serve. So the pedal station is open Tuesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And anytime during that window, you can drop off a bike donation for us. So that's also where volunteers learn bike mechanics, and then they become a volunteer for us to fix up those bikes. But that is where we take bike donations in, is at the pedal station. It's over on the west side of Colorado Springs. Main intersection nearby is Highway 24 / Cimarron. But Highway 24 and 21st Street. And there's a little side street called Bott Avenue, and that's where we're located.
Okay. Trying to think if I have any bikes laying around.
Bike parts too, trailers, all this stuff that is super helpful. And sometimes it's not the person's bike, it was their neighbor's, and they just talk them into it. If a neighbor has a garage sale and sees a bike, hey, if you don't sell that, can I take it to this place that I know of that gets these bikes back out into the neighborhoods? And so it's that old mountain bike sitting in garages, and by donating that or parts, old tube, whatever the case is, we make any and all uses that we can out of it. And at bare minimum, we make sure that the rubber and the metal gets recycled. So we make sure that metal items don't go to the landfill, and we make sure that rubber, so old tubes and tires, also gets recycled, and it goes to become that product that you see on playgrounds a lot.
Right.
That, rubber mulch.
Yeah. Okay. You guys are here in Colorado Springs. Are you bigger than that, or are you trying to expanding? What's your guys' vision as far as expansion goes?
We explored the idea of expansion, and really we keep coming back to how much deeper we need to dive right here in the El Paso County region.
Sure.
So there's a lot of great entities throughout the country that do some sort of similar program as us, where you have a community bike center, you have a place where kids can earn a bike, you have some summer programming. That type of concept exists throughout the country. For us in Colorado Springs specifically, Colorado Springs exploded with so many suburban areas. There's so much of a population growth. And then it's also how the city has expanded. We don't have an enormously dense urban core. We have super big neighborhoods way over there. It's all 30 minutes apart even.
Right.
But there are kids all throughout, and all kids have access to a lot of screens, maybe too much. Some kids in more affluent areas, that doesn't mean they're also mental health related things. So we want to not only work as young as 2 and 3 and 4 years old to make sure kids learn to ride a bike when they're young, we want to work all the way up through age 18. So we want to continue to expand programming right here where we are, so that there's bicycling education, bicycle access, and opportunities to ride for youth throughout. And so truly diving deeper and having a bigger impact right here is where our focus continues to be.
Yeah. I mean, those are the two paths: either expand or do what you're doing here better.
Bingo.
I love that.
Yeah.
What are some of the, really cool places? Because, Colorado is an amazing place to just be outside, hike, run, ride a bike, anything outdoors. Where are some places you take your guys' kids to go on really cool nature rides?
Oh, that's a good question. So we are so lucky to have what we have.
For sure we are.
I'll start with the major kind of well-known places. So Ute Valley Park, Palmer Park, Bear Creek Park, Cheyenne Mountain State Park. We host a lot of activities there. And then there are places that, it takes a lot of effort to get kids to places like that. Either they live there or, and the biggest barrier a lot of times for a family is transportation, not only of the kids, but of the bikes and the time and capacity that has to be required to go mountain biking for those big things. So what we've focused a lot now on is the development of little bike parks inside the neighborhoods where kids live, so families don't go as far or have to go as far. So the Cresta Pump Track and Skills Course, there's the El Pomar Youth Bike Park, Goose Gossage, and now we're continuing to look at multiple other places. Panorama Park recently got a little bike facility and fun features to ride and a really fun outdoor bike park. So we do a lot of those big, get kids out on some really great single track mountain biking experiences. But we also then balance that as much as we can with where you live and where can we ride and get access to those, those connector trails that are more transportation focused, like the Rock Island Trail, Sinton Trail, and Midland Trail, all those trails that you would find people commuting to and from work on, or just bigger groups doing more recreational riding.
Right.
So integrating that bicycle trail network as well is a big piece of what we do as well. So try to do a little bit all of it, and then always focusing on, when we bring, with our main focus of bringing bikes into neighborhoods and then teaching kids, then the third part of that is the ongoing opportunities to ride. And what we're trying to constantly do is develop the excitement and interest and we'll call them assets for kids to ride in the very same neighborhoods. And back when I grew up here, there was this field that had where we just built jumps and had some trails, and less of that exists.
Yeah.
There's still those pockets of property that are undeveloped or whatever, but those are the places I remember riding as a kid, other than Palmer Park. And, on those rare occasions we would go ride Rampart Reservoir, but building those jumps and all that fun stuff. Kids really love that stuff too.
That was like the norm back in the day. I mean, I'm 31. I remember like in the early 2000s at my father's house, he lived in a cul-de-sac. And so that little circle area in the middle, we had littered with jumps. And there was like the neighbors who had kids who like loved that we did it. And then we had like the older stuck up neighbors who were like calling the HOA, like, these kids are at it again, digging in the dirt. I thought it was awesome. We got so hurt out there.
Oh yes, absolutely.
All the time. But
absolutely. That was the good stuff.
That was funny. But like, that's what I mean. That doesn't exist as much anymore.
Yeah. And so the city of Fountain, we've worked down in Fountain recently too, with bringing in a little bit more of a BMX focus because they have a great pump track down there. And there's also a BMX track down there, Cross Creek BMX. So we've partnered with that team and brought some programming down there as well. But again, to that point of when kids get on a BMX bike and there's some jumping involved, mountain bikes too. But I mean, I remember as a kid, I went around looking for, what can I jump? What can I jump?
Yeah.
And then it was so sketchy. We just stacked 2x4s, no nails or anything. And then we got smart and got thicker plywood and then used cinder blocks.
Right. Yeah.
And then we would jump each other. It was, I'm lucky that I didn't get as hurt as often as I did, for sure.
And the whole thing would slide instead of jump it. It all starts with the little curb off the driveway.
Yep.
So, that's where.
And you feel like you're 3 feet in the air. And you're 3 inches, but
your back tire didn't even leave the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Medicare Mentors. When it's time to consider your Medicare options, it's time to talk with Medicare Mentors. Medicare Mentors, powered by Spark, is veteran-owned, a long-standing Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center partner, and the Veterans Voice podcast channel provider. More than that, they go above and beyond to make sure that when you need them, they are there lending a helping hand. Medicare Mentors, powered by Spark, always above and beyond. Visit MedicareMentorsLLC.com for more information.
Well, I want to start to segue towards the end here with some inspiration. So before we started, I said I wanted to hear about, a really inspirational story about one of the kids you helped, first time on a bike, something like that. But before we go there, I want to hear an inspirational story about you. So Tell me about a really hard like bicycle journey, like a 100-mile, 200-mile ride that, you know, maybe you thought about quitting, maybe you didn't know if you were going to make it through, weather, ran out of water, something like that.
I haven't thought about. I enjoy racing.
Okay.
And recently I raced on the velodrome, so track cycling. It's think of NASCAR.
Sure.
But you're on a fixed gear bike, so no brakes.
Oh, okay.
And you're going really fast.
I've seen that
really
in the
hard.
Olympics,
So we have that here in town, and we started doing programming there too, and made programming free for kids to come learn the velodrome. People definitely would want to check that out too, because it's a big deal that we were able to get that, and worked with USA Cycling and the Olympic Committee to open it back up to the community.
Okay.
So I raced at the velodrome. It's super fun, way outside of my comfort zone because I didn't grow up riding the velodrome, but that's a fun experience. I raced my fat bike, which is those snow bikes with the massive tires.
Yeah.
So I raced my fat bike at night in Leadville, and it was minus 15, and I bonked for the first time. And I'd never experienced that, where I hadn't eaten enough. My energy went depleted, and then you start getting tingly. It's not a good position to be in. And I don't know why a Dum Dum sucker lollipop was in my pack. Found that, and these guys at the fire pit, actually all they had available was whiskey. So So anyway, but it was just enough to get sugar in my body to finish. That was interesting. But that was
how far was
racing was fun. It wasn't huge. It wasn't extremely far at all. It was, I think, all in all 15 to 20 miles.
Oh, okay. Terrain tough though.
Yeah, but at night in the snow, super high elevation.
Oh, wow.
So that was a fun experience.
Yeah.
For sure, was just racing my fat bike. But I remember I think the most meaningful one that I will never forget. So not maybe more than 2 years after I lost my older brother, maybe 3-4 years, but I started racing a cross-country mountain bike. And I did a race at Cheyenne Mountain State Park, and I was on a single speed, so no gears, racing my heart out. And I'll never forget, I felt this overwhelming sense of relief about him. And it was the first time I cried tears that were happy. And it was actually this massive amount of joy that I felt. There's a big element of my faith and spirituality piece to this, but I was actually in tears now, coming down with rocks to maneuver and stuff like this. So it was a dangerous spot to be having some healthy tears. Yeah. But so I actually remember I was riding and I had to kind of get my eyes dry. It was looking back, I'm so glad I didn't crash, but I immediately got so overwhelmed with, and then I just decided, it's best to just let it flow, open my eyes real wide. And now I started doing a descent on lap number 2. It wasn't enormously technical, but technical enough that you don't want to make a mistake. So that was such a memorable. I mean, it was such a relief. I mean, for years, I actually couldn't, in a healthy way, shed a tear. Right. And it happened during a bike race, and I was actually in first place, so nice. I won that race. But it was fun, and that was without question such a meaningful race ride. Experience for sure.
Just curious, what do you think switched that you were able to look at your brother's situation a little bit differently, like in a more light instead of dark?
Yeah. Wow. I think it was probably the amount of time that had passed. I was by myself. I was doing something I loved. And nobody else was around me, legitimately. And that's not to brag that I was in first place. I just realized that's how. Yeah. It was, I think, all around perfect situation. Kind of, I enjoy fishing, and there's those times where you actually could care less about catching a fish. You just look around at where you are, and you go, wow, kill me now. This is perfect. I could go right now. Yeah. It was one of those type of moments where it just sort of stars aligned, everything aligned. And let me back this up, because now you got me thinking even more so I'll just speak out loud here. I processed a lot when I was on my bike anyway, all the time. Right. I would talk to myself. I was very vocal because nobody else would be around. Yeah. And I would often choose to ride solo. people would often talk about, let's go ride bikes. And I'd go, I will, but I'd also have to always ride by myself.
Right.
I mean, that's just how I could, you know, recharge my batteries at minimum, right? So there was another aspect of that is I think I was having so much fun doing it. And then that led to whatever type of way in which my brain was processing what I was doing. I then thought of my brother, and then it just kind of happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of developed my own philosophy around death because I've unfortunately been exposed to it a lot. I've lost a brother as well. And you have to like look at their life and find aspects that you respected, maybe character traits, ways they carried themselves that maybe you lack in yourself. And you have to like choose to incorporate those aspects you respected about your loved ones in your own life.
Right.
And then that's how you enable them to continue to live through you.
Right.
And it wasn't until I really started viewing death that way that I was able to, you know, you're never able to accept it. But like, that's the best thing I can come up with is if you have a loved one who has passed, you have to really just reflect on their life. What are some things I really respected about that person? Yeah. Instead of just be sad about it, let me just take on those things and let that person live through me.
Yeah.
So maybe you felt a little bit of that.
And the influence that he had was significant on me for sure. And one aspect was to get I'm not a great hockey player, but I'm good enough. I'm decent, right? But I'm only good because he played against me. He's the one who got me into playing hockey. He was also, you know, we lifted and exercised together. He started getting really strong and started doing more. And I wrestled a tiny bit when I was younger, but he was getting far more into the kind of the trajectory I think for him was going to be some MMA type stuff even. He was just really enjoying that, but it was his outlet. He lifted a lot, was getting really thick with muscle and all that, and it was great. But we would challenge each other because at the same time, I was still a little bit more endurance exercise focused with certain things, and then I'd talk to him about ride or whatever. And I think that what I do remember about that specific race incident was we would always push each other and we would always talk about pushing each other. And I think it was me. I thought of myself, I'm making him proud right now. I think was one feeling I remember having was make you proud, and knowing he was at peace, I'm now at peace. It was just sort of this unique blend of things, but I know I took on the strength, you know, a lot of that stuff I gained from him.
Yeah, you start to think about all the loved ones who have passed, and if they're watching you all the time, like, I got to make these people proud.
Yeah.
That is a good way to look at it.
It's true. It's true.
It sounds like you definitely did that.
Yeah,
I'm sure
absolutely.
Your brother would respect you for what you've done and are doing currently. This is an amazing nonprofit you're running. So
thank you.
Let's get back into that a little bit. Tell us about an inspirational story of a child you helped, just someone you really saw a bike change their life, much like yours.
Yeah, there were a handful. And this is when you work with youth exiting homelessness for not just a few months, but for a few years, there were a handful of aspects where getting those bikes to those youth were so meaningful. One of them, I had a young man who was able to get a job at Taco Bell working the closing shifts on the weekends. Our bus system doesn't run late and on the weekends. So he was walking home. He got jumped, and so I got him a bike, and that was a huge deal for him. And I got him a bike that was appropriate for him, and it was, but you know, that was significant. Just getting a bike from a safety and transportation standpoint. There was a young lady who struggled with some mental health, diagnosed bipolar. She I worked with a local cycling group. We got about 5 or 6 kids, some bikes, and we took them all mountain biking at Bear Creek Park. And she's coming down a very simple, we're not on single track, we're on just the path. And she, I think, grabbed the front brake, turned the handlebars at the same time, which is major no-no. Don't do that. So she went over the handlebars and hit the ground hard, tumbled, the bike goes over her head type of thing. And everybody stops. I go rushing up to her and, oh my gosh, are you okay? Are you okay? And her helmet was legitimately on its side. Her face was half dirt and everything. And she goes, that was amazing. That was awesome. And I go, what? Are you okay? I'm still trying to process.
Yeah.
But she had never crashed. She had never, I think, felt an adrenaline rush like that.
Right.
From that moment on, she was hooked on riding
For sure.
a bike, and she took care of her bike, and it was great. There was another fun time where this kid at the shelter was, he was a tough kid, right? And he would let you know he was a tough kid. And riding a bike, I used to ride everywhere all the time. We get 2 blocks, and this kid starts coughing embarrassingly because he smokes so much. And then he just goes, oh, maybe I should stop smoking. And I chuckled and I looked at him. I go, yep.
Yeah.
I mean, and then we started talking about all the money he'd save if he quit smoking too. So there was that. Then, okay, those were a lot of those initial moments that were so meaningful where I realized again and again, there's a lot of reason we should get bikes to youth who need them. There's so much that can happen from a mental health standpoint, from a physical health standpoint. And then there's a handful of kids that have done our Learn to Ride, or we've taught to ride off the side of our Earn a Bike program, because 1 out of 10 kids in 5th grade still didn't know how to ride a bike on average all the time. Sometimes it was 2 out of the 10 still had never learned to ride a bike. So whether it was Bristol Elementary School or Atlas Prep or wherever we were working, when kids learn to ride a bike for the first time, especially as they're older, they yell out the funniest, cutest, "This is amazing." One girl screamed, "This is the greatest day of my life." And she just whipping around the basketball court. I mean, those, you'd never forget the way her voice sounded and just the circumstances surrounding it all.
Right.
We've had experiences every year. We have multiple experiences like that where kids learn to ride for the first time, where kids, for some dynamic, they just push themselves outside of their comfort zone and do some sort of mountain biking feat, like clean a section or climb a hill or whatever it is. And those are always super memorable too. But I have the younger they are, the cuter the stuff they say and do, and how their bike just becomes their, just parents are cracking me up too, because the parents' comments are often so great. And one mom, I'll never forget, at Meadows Park Community Center, we just did a Learn to Ride for 3 or 4 kids that hadn't learned to ride. And mom pulled me aside, kind of stepped up next to me, and said, "Thank you so much for doing this. I would have taught my kid to ride, but I don't know how to either."
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was just, of course, we're happy to, and no problem. And then we thought, got to get some adults learn to ride now going too, because we know, and statistically, kids are far more likely to ride if mom rides.
Yeah.
So they're far more likely to ride if mom rides.
For sure.
So then we're like, well, shoot, we got to get some adult learn to ride stuff going or whatever. But yeah, that moment standing in the parking lot of why the kid never learned to ride. Well, yeah, mom doesn't know how to ride either. So that was, I'll never forget that one too. That was a good day.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah.
Well, you use a popsicle as motivation. You could probably get people to
You
do
really
anything.
can. Yeah, dangling a carrot probably is healthier and good, and dangle a carrot, but dangling a popsicle, that works too.
You need the calories.
They're organic.
Yeah. Oh,
Whatever.
okay, perfect. Well, we started the podcast with your passion for bicycling and how it's helped you grow and overcome many obstacles. And your whole purpose here was to help others do the same through bicycling. So you just shared about 5 or 6 examples about how you're doing it. So you're doing it.
Yeah.
You're doing exactly what you wanted to do. So take some time and appreciate yourself and your team and what you guys are doing as an organization, because it's truly an amazing thing.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the Veterans Voice podcast. We appreciate you sharing your story and taking the time out of your busy day to come chat with us. But we hope to have you on again in a couple months once you get done with your sabbatical.
Going on sabbatical,
which is awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll be in touch, brother. I appreciate
good.
you coming on, and thanks again for coming on the Veterans Voice.
It was a pleasure, absolute pleasure. And thanks giving me the opportunity to tell more of my personal story is always meaningful, and I appreciate that. So thank you. It's really been great.